Says we're live.
Okay, go ahead, Lou.
Great. So let's go ahead and call this Finance and Operations meeting to order at 6 o'clock. We are meeting remotely via the governor's orders. Matt, if you want to start us off and walk us through your document.
I will, thank you. So we will start with the current year-to-date financials as of April 24th. I'm just going to go through the Word document, which is the commentary. We are in a much more favorable position as of last week. We are looking at a current reforecast of $371,169 under budget. And that is an increase. I think we were around 72,000 last time we reported out to the subcommittee. So we have a few changes driving that increase. One major one is under salaries, which is related to the spring coaching stipends. There's a pending MOU with the WFT to pay 25% of the spring coaching stipends for some virtual training and coaching for the teams that participate in spring sports. So that savings, the 75%, is estimated about $101,000. In addition, we also have our, lack of substitutes with the distant learning. So that's a savings, a projected savings of about $125,000. Let's look at a few other items here under salaries. We also have the security position for the entire year, which is unpaid FMLA. So that's a savings of about $70,000 on an annual basis. I'll discuss some unbudgeted expenditures on the salary side. We have our substitute para salaries and our choice paraprofessionals. Those are just trending based on prior year actuals. That's about $50,000 over budget, but we discussed all the other potential savings, which add up to about $536,000 just on the salary line. Under benefits, there is one change from the prior period. We had discussed the HSA contributions, which are less than what was budgeted, and our workers' comp premium. In addition, for this period, we have projected employee education reimbursements, which are coming under budget, about $25,000. Any questions on salaries or benefits before I move on to the other sections?
Just a quick question on the spring coaching stipends.
Yes.
You said that's pending. Is there any thought in our heads that wouldn't actually happen, or?
Yeah, Lou.
I believe it's been agreed upon. I just don't know if it's been signed at this point.
Yeah, and the only other thing we need to wait on, Lou, is what the CIAC is going to do. We may need to come back to the table in the event that the CIAC actually runs a brief schedule, which would encompass the month of June. We know CIAC has already canceled the spring tournaments, so at this point in time, we're ready to sign the MOU at 25%, knowing that in the event that we have some semblance of a season, it may need to be adjusted. And we've looked at other districts. There are some districts that have already settled their budgets that paid coaches the full stipend. There are other districts that paid the coaches no stipend whatsoever. So we try to come somewhere within the middle. We know that our coaches, many of them had started the process of preparing and planning, even though the spring season did not officially start. We closed prior to the official start of the spring season. So we'll come back to that in the event that we get some sort of an abbreviated season in with CIAC.
Great, thank you.
Under purchase professional and technical services, we still have our unbudgeted expenditures of $105,000 that are related to pupil services. That is unchanged from the prior period and also from earlier in the year. One new addition is the potential savings of $25,000 in legal services. And this is just based on where we are currently with our year-to-date and essentially what's happening in the district and in the state. I don't anticipate that we're going to hit our budgeted number just based on the services that are required, especially on the special ed side with legal. Under other purchase services, we have unbudgeted expenditures of about $450,000, and This is primarily due to our students outplaced at private facilities, very similar to the prior period we reported. We also have some homeless student transportation that is over budget. We did take out one item. I believe last period we had an unbudgeted expenditure related to athletic transportation, and obviously now that spring sports are canceled, that is no longer an issue for our budget. And we have potential savings of $205,000. This is for students outplaced at public education facilities. The other piece, as I mentioned, unbudgeted, is at private facilities. So two different types of outplacement facilities. And under supplies, we have a potential savings of $220,000. This is primarily due to the 75% spending cap that's been in place since the beginning of the fiscal year, and this is all related to instructional supplies, admin and office supplies, books and periodicals, and technology supplies. I think that number may increase slightly just based on the amount of time we are participating in distance learning and the lack of consumable products and purchased for the replenishment in their schools. So we'll monitor that over the next few weeks as we get into June. Any questions on those three major objects?
So Matt, I have a general question. So this is as of April 24th. Is there potentially other projected savings the rest of the fiscal year, May and June, or is this kind of factored in with those projections already in
So those projections will go through June, and just below supplies in that Word document, I have some other variables that are not documented, which include our April through June transportation, as well as our special ed outplacement. So we may have an increase to that $371,000.
Okay, so but the 371 is our best guesstimate right now through the fiscal year.
Absolutely.
In savings. Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, I have a question, and it's on outplacement for students, special ed. When we pay that tuition, is that not reimbursed? I mean, that's just done? So let's say a student costs $160,000 plus transportation. Do we get anything back?
Some facilities we do pay up front. The majority of them we are billed on a monthly basis. With my brief conversations with special ed, I'm not aware of any decrease in the services and the hours that these students are receiving. So my assumption is we're paying 100% and there's some type of distance learning for those students.
Oh, okay.
But as I did put in my variables down there that it's an ongoing discussion, so we'll have to determine if there is any savings.
Okay. And that transportation is still included in the budget?
Transportation, yes, we do. We do have a potential agreement with Access Transportation for some of our routes where we will pay 80% versus 100%. And we're still working on the in-town routes with Autumn Transportation.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, could you just, and it may seem sort of like a no-brainer, but can you just give us a synopsis of sort of where that contract is with the busing? And I think from the outside, people might look at it and go, well, they're not busing our kids, so why are we paying them? Like, I understand it's a contract, but I mean, one could say, well, then drive the buses around town, so at least we're seeing the buses, you know, that type of thing. Is there a synopsis as to, short version, as to why we're still paying?
Yeah, and that's been a major concern with every district as to why we're paying for a service we're not receiving. And it goes to the governor's executive order to pay as practical. And we were not one of the first to act. We waited for other districts to reach a settlement and then kind of base it off those percentages. So with the outplacement, the 80% seems to be fairly typical and common among other districts. So we're comfortable with that number. With the in-district, that's what we're still negotiating and still working on, trying to get to a reasonable and fair percentage to pay to that contractor that compares to other districts.
And Lou, one of the things that we did also when we got to the point where we entered into the negotiations on this both of these contracts, we requested of both bus companies the breakdown of what their contract looks like in terms of expenditures for labor. As you know, I'm sure most bus companies likely laid off all of their drivers the moment we closed. So we did get a breakdown from each of the companies in terms of what the breakdown was of labor versus leases versus maintenance versus diesel. So that's why we're trying to come in with these numbers that are a little bit more reasonable. I know in talking with my colleagues in the greater Hartford area, we've seen a variety of different settlement rates. I know when I first talked with the Hartford area superintendents, they were looking anywhere between 80 and 85%. That seems to be where a lot of the districts are coming in now. As Matt said, right now with our in-district transportation, we've not yet reached an agreement. We think it's a little high, and we're going to continue to have the conversation. Again, I think the idea too with the governor's order, we're kind of tied to that in terms of, as Matt said, where practicable. My expectation would be if we're paying these bus contracts even at 80%, they're going to be bringing workers back. That would certainly be my expectation.
Thanks. All right. Does anyone have any other questions on what Matt's presented so far?
And I'll just, even though I covered this,
Matt, did you want to continue on with?
Oh, sorry, Lou. I just want to go over the last piece on the commentary. I did talk about it with Kenny, the uncertainty and the variables that are not documented with the transportation and tuition. If we do settle with transportation on these agreed upon rates, we could have an additional savings of about $100,000 in the budget. Nope. Got your back, Lou?
Yes, sorry about that. Welcome to technology.
Lou, are you in New Hampshire?
No.
Oh, just see that Hampton Beach little
I
sign.
know. Wishing. Wishful thinking. Matt, did you want to go on to the next bullet point of budget 21, fiscal year 21?
Yes, we can talk about next year's budget. I guess we can open that up for discussion. At this point, we're still at the Board of Ed approved increase of 3.5%, which is just under $2 million. And we have the superintendent and board chair presentation next Monday for town council.
And did I see a note that that's sort of that's a different type of presentation?
Yeah, what that will be next Monday, Lou, will just be a brief presentation where Chuck and I will go through the budget tenets. Typically speaking, what's happened in the past, the board approves the budget. We would go before town council and entertain questions. We were intending to do that on March 16th, and the town council meeting was canceled, and we were closed. So on Monday, it will be Chuck and I doing a brief presentation of the board-approved 2021 budget, and then the town manager will present the town's proposed budget. And at that point in time, we will virtually take calls from members of the public to allow them to offer their opinion on what the budget looks like. Then after that, I understand that there are a series of budget workshops that council will engage in, and the expectation is that the board will get their allocation of funding no later than May 27th.
Michael,
Yes.
in the past, we had a separate meeting with the board and the council after the presentation. Do you anticipate that happening?
I would anticipate that happening. I do understand that there is a budget workshop, I think tentatively scheduled for May 9th. We don't seem to be on that particular one. I know police department, physical services is on that one. But I would imagine that we would probably engage in some sort of a virtual workshop. In that, if that happens, obviously, we'll get the link out to you so you all can participate in that.
Great, I hope that does happen. Great, thank you.
Great. Anything else on that? I think that brings us to other business, if I can pull up my right tab here. Yes, is there any other business from anyone?
We're going through this quick. I think other business, we're going to talk about some transportation, but we pretty much covered that with the financials as far as the contract settlement and the one pending.
One other piece of other business, just so you know, obviously with the coronavirus pandemic, there has been a series of stimuli coming from the federal government. One of the pieces of legislation that came through was the CARES Act. At this point in time, we're waiting to see what the state of Connecticut is going to do in terms of how it delineates that funding. There was a total of, I believe it was $110 million, $111 million slated to come to the state of Connecticut. It would come through the state. The state has 10% holdback on that to use for their own programming, and then the remaining money would be delineated out to either districts directly or to municipalities. Once I get notification of what that's going to actually look like, I'll certainly share that information with you. And again, that would be delineated out for payment of staff, for programs, and being able to maintain what we have in district. The pandemic certainly has created quite a bit of anxiety in the district, and again, the government trying to provide us with some relief is certainly welcome.
Matt, did you have any update on the Chromebook purchase?
So the Chromebook lease, yes. So I have the paperwork, and by tomorrow I should be able to put signatures on it, send it back over to the finance company, and those should be coming in within a few weeks. And then we'll make our May and June payment. We'll have our 12 payments next fiscal year. We're essentially just starting the lease 2 months earlier than originally anticipated, but we will have a little bit of savings in next year's budget as the revised quote is lower than it was in December and January.
Okay, but we're still looking at an arrival in a couple of weeks of those.
Correct.
And we do, Lou, also with the units that are going to be coming offline, our technology team was able to work with the leasing company where we will be able to hang on to those units until August 18th. So that gives us enough time for overlap. We'll be able to collect the machines, clean them up, and then get them ready to go back. So it worked out perfectly, and I thank you for your support of that lease.
I guess one other question I had, since now we're operations and that includes lunches, did you have any, other than your weekly update, which I love to track the number of lunches, how's that program going? Do we feel we're adequate with the locations we have? Yeah,
actually, I've got it for communications tonight, and I had sent out a communication last night to the Weathersfield community. We're doing on average anywhere between 250 and 350 lunches on a daily basis. We are chiefly housed out of Weathersfield High School. This week we opened up another satellite location over on Lancaster, which is servicing families in that particular area. That one is a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we've actually utilized some of our lunch aides to assist with that. These were folks that came back aboard with the governor's executive order. So we're getting out anywhere between 20 and 30 lunches out to that site. Depending upon whether or not we remain closed for the rest of the year, we are looking at the potential of another site up in the north end of town. So it has been very helpful to have these lunches out to families, and across the state of Connecticut, there have been over 2 million meals served over the past month with this pandemic. So we felt it very important to start at day one. I'm proud of the fact we were able to get it up and running. And, would certainly like to give a shout out to the staff over at Weathersfield High School, Bobby, Natasha, Malia, and we have one other individual, actually 2 other individuals over there. So they do a great job, and they make sure that our kids get to eat and get a healthy meal.
And we're good to go with the tent situation? I know that was a concern you had.
Yes, we have,
Otherwise,
yes, we have purchased 2 additional tents, including the one that Mr. Emmett brought up from home. So we've got enough to work on. And again, with that, as I've said to all of our administrators, any type of expenditure that we're making currently during the pandemic, Matt is keeping a list of that, so there is potential reimbursement potential from FEMA down the road. So we're definitely monitoring all of our expenditures at this point.
wow, Zoom is not liking me tonight. All right, any other business?
I just find it unusual that we don't have school, and we don't have the usual April, May, and June here. It's a unique situation, Michael.
Yes, it is.
We might not have an August, September, October.
Don't say that.
I mean, you never know. Or we might have an August, September, October, and have no November, December, January.
Let's hope that's not true, but.
I hope it's not true also, but we'll see. And I mean, we'll make the best of it. You know, it's one of the things that we've done. We've been very resilient. You know, I think from a perspective of, although we're working from home, we're working remotely, we're continuing to stay connected to the community. We're continuing to stay connected among our schools. And I think, you know, we're doing the best we can for our kids and for our families. And it's certainly not easy, but we're making the best of it. And I think we're having a positive impact on our kids.
Great. If there's nothing else, we'll look to end this meeting. This is just a reminder that you want to go to your, excuse me, your other invite for the 7 o'clock meeting. That is not this same login, so make sure you do that. And I guess we'll have a motion to adjourn. Anyone?
So moved.
Great. Second.
Second.
Bobby? Great.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
We'll talk to you soon.
Yes.